In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Montblanc Meisterstu 124G fountain pen. I'll go over the specs, I will do a writing sample, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about this pen coming up. This is the Montblanc Meisterstu 124G, and this is a pen that I've wanted for a long time. I didn't know that I wanted this pen, but for me, as somebody that's experienced many fountain pens, the Montblanc vintage nibs are probably the best nibs that I've used. However, I've had issues with the cork filling systems and celluloid shrinkage causing problems with, like cap rings, and also issues with like discoloration from the piston mechanisms in these pens. So I wanted to try to find something that would be a great everyday pen that doesn't have any of those downsides. And this is really that pen. It doesn't have any of those issues. So I really think it's kind of a hidden gem. And, interestingly, I had to go older to get the better pen, but I'm so happy that I did. I've been using this pen nonstop pretty much since I've gotten it. It writes beautifully with no hesitation. It seals really nicely. This is just a fantastic pen. So I'll walk through the pen, tell you why I like this better than any of the 136 or 146 celluloid pens I've had, as well as some of the second series pens, 2, 3. I've had a 234. I've had a 334, as well as some other vintage pens. So let's walk through it. Now, starting at the cap, we do have that Mont Blanc star on the top there. Looks really nice. The color on this is very white. It has not ambered for whatever reason. And then on the cap here, which says Meisterstück and Mont Blanc, looks really nice. And then we have this very pretty vintage clip, which kind of undulates, gets fatter, wider, and then fatter again, and does kind of the same from the side. It goes up and down in profile. Very cool looking. I do think this is like a stamped metal. If we look underneath, there's kind of like a lip to the edge of this. Very cool looking clip. And then we have a simple unmarked cap ring here with these two little indentations on the edge there. I love the look of this. This pen, it's not ostentatious. It just looks like a nice quality pen. It's not showy in any way. Absolutely love that. One of the issues that I had on the 1.3 and 1.46 Meisterstück pens, not all of them, but a decent amount of them, the celluloid would kind of shrink in this area, and the little cap rings, let's see if I have another one. This is, a brand new pen, but these outer cap rings would become loose in time. That's not an issue here. They don't have those little rings to come loose, so that annoyance is saved. At the end of the pen here, we can see it says 124G, and it says, hopefully we can see that, it says OB because this is an oblique broad. So I can't remember when they stopped marking the nibs. I think they did it up to I think once they got rid of the celluloid bodies, they stopped marking the nibs on the pens, which is really, I think, a mistake. I mean, I guess maybe it makes it more elegant, but when you buy a used plastic Mont Blanc, you have no idea what nib grade it is. I mean, you have some idea, but you don't know exactly what it was. So really like that they mark those. Now 124G is the smooth body one. They did ones that were chased, engraved in I think a couple different patterns. They also did like an Arco silver, and maybe some other celluloid colors. This is the most basic, the most plain. I know like the Arco ones would be very, very expensive, and the engraved like chased ones would also be a bit more valuable. So this is sort of the most basic one. Now I paid, I believe, $700 for this, which is a pretty high price, to be honest. It's worth it to me because I love the pen. It has a warranty from Osman Summer, so I know that if I have a problem, I have somebody that can fix it, that knows the pen. So not a cheap pen, but these are for sure cheaper than the equivalent 136, 146, which everybody loves. Now, I should be comparing these 144, 134 would be actually more the size. They just didn't, I don't believe they made a 6 in this series. Now, in terms of uncapping it, 1.5 turns, it does post very nicely, and the pen is lightweight, it balances well in hand. Nice single piece body here. These aren't split like the later pens. And then we have a Montblanc 14 karat gold oblique broad nib. Now this nib should have been two-tone, but that rhodium plated or whatever the silver plating was is now gone. You absolutely can find these, intact. This one isn't, but you know what? It writes well, it looks great. I don't need that, so that's what we got here. These older nibs were very shapely. They taper, I think, more aggressively for like the main length of the nib before the breather hole, and then they flare out rather nicely. We have a flat ebonite feed underneath. Now this pen is what's called a push knob filler. So it's kind of like a button filler. You unscrew this, stick it in the ink, and then push on the knob here, and it depresses a sac and brings ink into the body. This is a very durable system. It's easy to fix. It's not complicated like the Montblanc telescopic filling system, and there's no cork in here that's going to wear out. So this should provide many, many years of service before it needs any maintenance. Whereas the Montblancs with cork in their piston filling systems often require new corks every 3 to, we'll say, 6 years. For whatever reason, the way that I use the pens tends to be more like 3 before I stop getting a good seal. You can store them with water. Some people recommend that, some people don't. Anyway, you don't have that issue here. You also don't have an issue where the celluloid becomes discolored from the piston knob rubbing against it. You'll see a lot of times on the older ones, older 146, 136, or 1314 series pens, where they're starting to become clear in spots on the barrel, and that's just from the cork taking the color out of the celluloid. So don't have any of that issues here. So this is just a fantastic everyday pen, really a reliable workhorse. Now let's look at the measurements here. So we're looking at roughly 123 millimeters long and about 145 posted. Unposted, looking at about 113. Now, I do use this does fit my hand unposted. I do tend to use it posted. It balances really nicely. It's not very heavy. The grip section here at the widest point is about 10 and at the narrowest 8.9. So small taper there, very, very comfortable for me. Now, in terms of the weight, and this has a pretty new fill in it. This is 15 grams, which is nothing. And uncapped about 10 grams. So very lightweight, very comfortable. Now, this pen is roughly the same size as a Pelikan M400 or M200 like I have here. So if you like that size pen, this is very much that size. Now to compare it to a 149, you can see it is quite a bit smaller than that. And then here it is with a Diplomat Aero size. It's a standard pen. It's not oversized. Standard vintage sizes, I should say. The modern standard size is bigger than this, but this is a very comfortable everyday pen. For the writing sample, I'm going to be using a Papermind Tomoe River hardcover notebook. These notebooks are excellent for fountain pens, and for Blake's Broadcast viewers and subscribers, you can get 10% off with code BB10 at checkout. Okay. Is a Montblanc 124G. It's an OB nib, And this is Montblanc Toffee Brown. Oh my gosh. Okay. We'll try fast writing. Yeah, no performance issues. This nib is fantastic. In terms of line variation with no pressure, there's a little bit there. And then with pressure, you can get quite a bit here. And if I write with some pressure, you get a nice amount there. This is a fantastic nib. I do think that of all the nibs that I've used, now I will say I'm not a vintage pen person. My collection is mostly modern pens, but I've used a lot of vintage nibs, and I do think still to this day, vintage nibs are the best nibs out there, and the best vintage nibs I've personally used have been on Montblanc pens. I've had some fantastic ones on Aurora pens, Omas pens as well. But if I really think about what were the very best nibs I've ever used, they tend to have been on vintage Montblanc pens from the 30s or earlier. I don't know why that is, but that just tends to be there. And so, this is probably the nicest nib in my collection at the moment. It just works so well. It writes effortlessly. The pen is just easy to deal with. Anyway, really love this nib. It's just a fantastic, fantastic pen. So what are my pros and cons for the Montblanc Meisterstück 124G? Well, this is a fantastic writing pen. I do think out of all the nibs that I've used over the 20 or so years I've been using fountain pens, the best in my mind always stick out as Montblanc nibs from the 40s or earlier. Now, not all of them are amazing, but when I think of the best nibs I've ever used, that's kind of where they are. And this is just a fantastic oblique, broad 14 karat gold nib. It performs flawlessly. It doesn't skip. The pen seals very nicely. So, I leave it in on my desk for a week while I travel or something, come back to it, writes instantly. It's fantastic. I really like the look of this pen. It is elegant. It isn't gaudy. It's simple. I love that. It looks like a high quality pen, but it's not flashy. You get a new Mont Blanc and it's like, okay, this is one, not very cool looking, and two, just kind of gaudy. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic pens still. They're just a little bit more showy. Now, the other thing I really love about this compared to almost every other vintage Mont Blanc that I've had is that this has the push knob filling system instead of the telescopic or just standard piston filling system with a cork. So this is very durable. It's very serviceable. It's not going to require the same amount of maintenance that a cork sealed, celluloid Mont Blanc will. It also doesn't have the issue where it loses coloring from the piston rubbing on the celluloid, and it doesn't have any issues with those loose rings like I often see on the newer Meisterstück celluloid pens. So you kind of get the best of everything here. I really think this is kind of a hidden gem. The cons here, you gotta find one. These are not as common as the newer Meisterstücks, so you gotta watch for them. They aren't cheap, although they are less expensive, assuming you get the standard smooth black one. than the equivalent 146, or sorry, 144134. So, you can get these for sure. $700 or less is where I would say you want to be with one of these. Probably $500 would be a good price for one of these in good condition. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This is one of my favorite pens. Do you have a Montblanc 124? Do you like this pen? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen, paper, and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and until next time.